Hello, coaches. So, a question I often get from beginning coaches and that I hear sort of bounced around coaching circles a lot is coaches who are looking for powerful coaching questions, trying to gather together what are like the amazing things to ask. And there's a lot of lists out there. Even like one of the books that I highly recommend for a lot of coaches is The Coaching Habit, which is basically a collection of 7 questions that are really powerful to ask. And when I was first learning coaching, which was in the context of this men's and weekend intensive that I was the course supervisor for, spent a lot of time like over and over again just sitting on the sidelines of this intensive, watching some really amazing, powerful coaches work with people in small group settings. And one of the things I would do is I would sit there at the side as I was observing great coaching happening with a notebook, and I'd be writing down some of the things that they were saying. I'd be taking notes. I'd be noticing which things would happen during a session which would create a big shift, which would create the movement, which would create change in someone, or would at least kick someone out of their usual thinking. So in a way, I was both gathering great questions. I was gathering the languaging that they were using. I was observing. So there is something to gathering powerful coaching questions and noticing them. And I definitely recommend that you watch great coaches coach, like wherever you have an opportunity to. There's a lot of them available on YouTube. I've got a separate resource I can share with you for like some links to example coaching sessions. And I still will, every once in a while, when someone asks really good, something really powerful for that moment in that session for that person, like I've got a file on my computer of like coaching questions. I'll go open it up and I'll write it down and I'll close it. But I notice that I don't really go back and I read that file, because it's not the powerful coaching question that actually makes a difference. That's mistaking the form for the art. That's mistaking what the question was for what was it that had that particular question make a difference in that particular moment for that particular person. So yes, pay attention to powerful coaching questions, but even more important than that, look towards the come from behind the question. Sometimes the come from might be revealed just by like the language of the question alone. Like, as a coach, what would you need to be curious about, or what perspective would you be holding in order for you to naturally come up with that question? Because really, that's where powerful coaching questions come from. It's not a set of questions that you memorize. It's not a list of techniques. Powerful coaching questions are the natural question that arises in the moment, where it's just what you find coming out of your mouth because it's what you actually want to know about. There's an innocence to it, where it's like, well, what about this? Or is it this or this? And it's where you're coming from that is going to turn it into something powerful. It's where you're coming from. It's either what you're seeing or what you're not seeing that's being transmitted through the question, rather than it just being about the language of the question itself. So I encourage you to do both. Like, yeah, if you notice a powerful coaching question, enjoy that, wonder like where else you could use that, use it on yourself. But even more fundamental than that is, what is the perspective behind that question? What is it that you're seeing, or where is it that you're looking from as a coach in order to ask such a question? In a way, you need to earn asking a powerful coaching question so that it's an authentic, in the moment question that you actually want an answer to. And let me, just to give a little bit of context, let me actually open my file of powerful coaching questions and see what comes to mind. Yeah, like a fun question that I got from when I was clienting, when I was being coached by one of the like first generation 3 principles practitioners, coaches. She asked me, "Are you happy?" In most coaching contexts, that's not actually a very powerful question. But in the context that we were in, and I sort of recognize in general, and like it's a good general question within the 3 principles conversation, within that style of, or that like orientation of coaching. It's a powerful question when you're in that inquiry of what someone wants. It's sort of like making sure, it's like, oh, well, are you happy? Because if they're happy, it's not really a problem-oriented conversation anymore. If they're not happy, that's a sign that there's some sort of misunderstanding somewhere. Like it's a guiding question that helps guide the conversation. And sometimes that can be a really powerful question. And a lot of the time, like that's just not a very useful question at all, because it's kind of, it'll be speaking to a more superficial level rather than a deep level. Let's see if I can find another good question to come up. Yeah, each of these, like every single question, like sometimes it'd be super powerful. Sometimes it'd be useless. Sometimes it'll just trigger your client or have them trust you even less, where it's clear that you're not actually attuned to them. That's why it's sort of dangerous to like just be relying too much on technique, including questions. Yeah, like each of these. Let me go up to some of the more general ones. Yeah, like for example, there's the question, do you know what to do? There's so many times where that question, do you know what to do, might just, if the client's in the middle of resistance, it might just leap up even stronger when you ask that question. It's like, yeah, I know what to do, but da 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 da. It's not honoring where they're at. It's not honoring where the coaching conversation is at. Yeah, like if someone's deep in resistance, do you know what to do? Might be something that just might be a question that might drive them further into resistance. However, if a client is in confusion or vague, or in this like there's so many things, or a bit of like overwhelm, or all these different options and possibilities, or deep into trying to figure it out, which is like a different kind of resistance. Sometimes the question, do you know what to do, might help slice through all of that thinking. Like if you come from somewhere of knowing that most people deep down underneath the clutter of all the thinking and all the trying to figure it out, they have this sense of just at least knowing the next step or knowing what their choice is, irregardless of all their thinking or justifying one way or another about it, then asking from that place, do you know what to do? Might suddenly give the client permission to settle down and know. So each of these questions, it requires attunement. And it's not like a tool coming out of a tool chest. Ideally, these questions are not something you've memorized, but it's just what occurs to you in the moment to be curious about. It's like, oh wait, there's all this confusion. You're trying to, like, you're doing all this work to figure out what to do. I wondered, is that all distraction? And is there already a knowing? Or what comes up to mind in that moment also, like, or is it that you just don't know what to do yet? And making peace with that. So whenever you come across a good coaching question, yeah, enjoy it, think about where you could use it, but even like investigate it. Like if there's something that really hits you, or oh my God, that's genius, instead of, oh yeah, I like that one, that makes sense. If it's like, whoa, if it really impacts you, a coaching question, also get really curious about like, what had that be the question? What might be behind that? Because that's, in a way, like a good coaching question, instead of being a cool technique to use with your clients, is actually an opportunity for you to deepen your artistry as a coach. Like, how was that coach looking at the world that in that moment? How were they attuned to the client that's the question that ended up coming out? And the more that you get good at this, like looking behind the question, before the question, the more often you're going to find yourself asking amazing, powerful coaching questions, not that you learned anywhere, that you never heard anywhere else. It's just what sort of falls out of your mouth almost accidentally. You might even distract yourself a little bit with like, oh wow, that was a good question. But that will start happening more often, more naturally, more easily, and you'll end up having bigger impact. Not because it's a powerful question, but because it's the right question for that moment. It's a question that takes the coaching deeper. So yeah, gather questions, think about them, and then forget them. Remember to attune to your client, and that's what's going to allow you to go deep.